Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my garden. It's Claudia. I garden in Georgia in zone 7B/8A. Today, we're going to be talking all about pruning. I'm going to give you 3 tips that, if followed, could make you a master pruner in no time at all. The first one is you want to talk about time. The second is you want to talk about tools. And number 3, we want to talk about technique. So let's start with number 1, timing. Well, as with everything in life, timing is essential. Timing in the garden for pruning means that you have to be observant and notice when things go in and out of bloom. That determines when you prune them. Those things that bloom in the spring should be pruned after they bloom. Let me repeat. Those things that bloom in the spring should be pruned after they have bloomed. The things that bloom in the summer should be pruned in the early spring, late winter when they are dormant. Let me give you some examples. Examples of things that you would prune after they have bloomed include things like weigela, things such as lilac, things such as forsythia, and any of those spring blooming shrubs. Things that you would prune in the spring/late winter include hydrangeas, roses, hibiscus, and things of the like. Hibiscus can be a little iffy because it depends on the type of hibiscus that there is. Your dinner plate varieties, you would probably clean those up in the spring when you see new growth. At least that's what's recommended so that you can actually see where they are. The other variety, such as your Rose of Sharon, which falls into the hibiscus family, you want to prune in the spring. Plants such as perennials are typically pruned back in the springtime, or if they are plants that provide a second flush of blooms, you can actually do a light cutting back and they will bloom again for you. Examples of those are things like veronicas and asters. So we have covered timing. So we want to make sure we do the timing. Let's review. Timing should be based on when things bloom and whether they bloom in the spring or summer. If they bloom in the spring, you prune them after they have bloomed. And if they bloom in the summer, you prune them in the early spring, late winter. Step number 2, or tip number 2, is we want to talk about the techniques that you use. You don't want to prune everything in the same way. Just like not all clothing is one size fits all, so too is pruning. Not one method works for everything. You do not want to shear a shrub, but a plant such as catmint can be sheared. So you want to make sure you're using the right method for the right type of a plant. Shrubs should be pruned to maintain shape, reduce disease, as well as to create airflow. You do not want to shear them because in shearing back a shrub, what you will do is cause the plant to put on abundant growth. And while you would think this is good, it's not necessarily good because it creates weakened stems that typically cannot support the load of the blooms that they have. Each and every plant has a shape that it prefers in which to grow. And oftentimes you can see that we've pruned it and we haven't pruned it properly. You know how you know that? It doesn't bloom as well for you as it could. Allow the plant to grow in the shape that it should, whether it's in the shape of a fountain, in the shape of a ball, a pyramid, or whatever was designed for that plant. If you're concerned about the shape of it in the space that you have it in, then it may not be in the right place. That being said, if you're pruning to maintain a shape, you want to be selective in the branches that you take out in order to maintain the shape. You may need to do a hard pruning or what's known as a rejuvenation pruning. And a rejuvenation pruning is when you cut the plant back hard in order to generate new growth. And that is typically done over a 3-year period in order to foster the right shape and the right health of the plant. You do not want to cut back all of the plant all at once because typically what happens is it pushes out a lot of new growth and produces weakened branches that can't support the weight of the plant. And then the plant develops an all new different shape because it wasn't pruned properly. I'm so sorry, y'all. I put on my sunscreen and somehow it got in my eye and it's causing my eye to tear up. So, excuse me. Another thing about using the right technique is you do not want to leave stubs, especially if you're pruning trees or certain shrubs. You don't want to have that stub that sticks out. You know, here is the branch that you're pruning, and then you leave this little nub sticking out from it. You want to prune it as close to the actual trunk as possible because if you don't, this is an entrance point now for disease to go in, and you want to avoid that at all possible. Additionally, a lot of times the tree will create this big scar around this because it's trying to heal itself. It diverts energy from elsewhere trying to heal itself. So all we need to do is make sure that we have pruned in the correct manner. Tip number 3, using the right tools. Y'all, I can't tell you how much this makes a huge difference. Using the wrong tools can actually kill your plant. You want to use the right tool for the right job. So if I'm cutting back phlox or catmint or things such as yarrow and or dianthus, anything like that, I'm going to use my Felcos, my little pruning shears. If I am doing branches on my shrubs and I'm selectively pruning, depending on the size of the branch, I may need either my pruning shears or my loppers. I want to make sure that I use the right tool in order to, number one, cut it without damaging the plant, but number two, in order that I don't hurt myself. If you use the wrong tool, you could actually damage your hands using pruning shears on too large of a branch. If it's larger than what a lopper can handle, consider using a mini chainsaw. I do this for anything over about an inch or so, and that works well as well. Another tool that can be used when pruning is a pole saw, whether it's a motorized pole saw or one that has just a saw attached to a long blade. That will allow you to avoid having to climb ladders, and they make great cuts. Since my husband became paralyzed, I am paranoid probably about falling off of a ladder, and it doesn't help that one of my best friends in high school, her grandfather passed away after falling off of a ladder. So I try to avoid ladders in the garden, especially because my yard is very hilly. It's not very level, and that could be dangerous. So using a pole saw allows me to reach well above my head, to cut off branches, to open for air circulation, and to provide more sunshine in the garden. It also allows me to remove dead or diseased branches. Additionally, with pruning, you want to make sure that you are not pruning too late in the year. Pruning too late in the year will cause a lot of growth that will be killed by your first frost. That could potentially damage your plant and cause it to die off. So you want to make sure you know when your stopping point is for pruning and follow those. How do you know that? You go and you look in your zone to see when is the latest it's recommended for pruning. When you're looking these things up, try to choose your information from one of the extension offices. The extension offices, their extension programs are very well researched, and so your information that you're going to get is science backed and not anecdotal. Anecdotal information is what, oh, this gardener has done and that gardener has done. And over time, it may work for them, but it may not work for you. When you get information from your local extension office, your state extension program, it's going to be for your state, your area, and is research backed, so it will always work. So remember, when we are pruning in the garden, make sure we pay attention to the time, make sure we use the right tools, and make sure also that we use the right technique. Until next time, happy gardening.